Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man.
All right.
You and I get connected here because you are an engineer of sorts with civil engineering, traffic engineering. You've done a lot of work around the state of Idaho and throughout the country, as well as hosting broader conversations about city and street design. There are a lot of things happening in Idaho right now that are just so curious to me. And, I don't have a big background in civil engineering, but the conversation that started for me happened right before the election last year. I had Rebecca Arnold in, who was running for ACHD, and she got beat by Alexis Pickering, who I was not fortunate enough to have on the show. She was out knocking doors. But people started reaching out and talking to me about engineering, traffic engineering, street engineering, growth of cities and everything. And so I started paying attention to it a little bit more. We have some bills going through right now in the legislature here in the last bit that are very, very curious to me. And you agreed to come in and talk to me about them. Hit me with it. Let's go one at a time, big guy.
Yeah. So, I come from the world of urban planning, all things. I started off in the world of transportation, but over the last several years, it's been a ton of health integration and how does health inform planning and vice versa, because that's how the planning industry was born. Housing, which is a massively hot topic in almost every community in Idaho, believe it or not.
Right.
And on and on and on. So yeah, to your point, a lot of things happening. A lot of bills.
A lot of bills.
Let's
start with, though, if we can.
Yeah.
Let's start with the bill that shifts priority away from, hey, we're going to consider pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists, to you can only do something to a sidewalk or a street if the primary impetus is benefiting motorists.
Yeah, and that is Senate Bill 1140.
Okay. Senate Bill 1140. Hit me with it.
The long and short of it is, it's a bill that is aimed mostly at entities here in the Valley, because this is where the bulk of the population is. And Ada County Highway District is its own behemoth. It's the only one like it in the entire country, and on and on and on. However, the bill, as it's written, says cities, counties, and highway districts throughout the state of Idaho are no longer allowed to take unilateral action on implementing projects that benefit pedestrians, bicyclists, etc., unless a project is primarily of benefit to motorists, which in the bill cites widening, corridor widening, intersection widening, certain technological things. But the reality is that ain't happening through most of the places in this state. I've worked in almost every city, probably 80-85% at least. And this bill makes their jobs worse. Absolutely.
Okay, now let's back up a little bit here. The bill is a state bill, and it goes directly to highway districts, which are taxing districts charged with taking care of highways and everything. Cities, like anybody dealing with a sidewalk, a bike lane, or a street, it's like they are saying what that can and cannot do. They're not leaving it up to local municipalities. They're not leaving it up to the city of Eagle, for instance, or, Coeur d'Alene, whatever it is. Why, though? Because again, I understand that you're saying, hey, look, it's primarily focused at the Treasure Valley, but like, what benefit does this bring to the citizenry?
It definitely doesn't. Pure and simple. I'll illustrate this with a point. I met one time a couple years ago with, he was basically the public works director for Homedale, rural community.
Okay.
Right? They make as many hops in that area as anywhere in the country. That's what they're about. He came to me and we're talking, and he's almost in tears. And I'm like, what's the problem? He says, I cannot get funding to this city to fill a sidewalk gap near an elementary school. Why? Because my application won't elevate enough in points. The biggest reason why of that, I can't check yes on was there or has there been a fatality.
Okay, back up. So he puts in an application to fill a gap where kids bicycle and walk and everything. And the applications are accepted or reviewed based on a point system?
Yes.
Well, okay, explain the point
grants
system.
are.
Okay.
Most grants of any nature are scored if they're competitive. And in the transportation world, dirty little secret is if someone died, that grant is probably going to be elevated and maybe even funded.
And that's a federal grant?
State, it depends, but mostly state. Gotcha. It could be federal. It just depends.
So this is money outside of his taxing district. So the people of Homedale aren't going to necessarily pay for it.
Yeah.
They don't have the money. And so then they say, okay, let's get a grant from the state or the federal government to help us fill, for instance, this gap.
Yes.
But You only get that money if you win the point game, like the GPA
Yes,
game, right?
100%.
And to increase that, your standing in that point system, you need substantial damage to life or property or something.
100%. That if you have a death, your grant is elevated. Chances of you getting those dollars to fix the problem are increased. That's the game. And that's the unwritten, untold story about funding in this state and pretty much every state, right? But the fact of the matter is, Homedale is a heck of a lot more like the vast majority of communities in the state of Idaho than Boise is, right? Homedale is the same as almost, you pick a city, right? Under 10,000, under 5,000, don't have tax base really to address their own needs, especially things like that. And it's even worse for them because go get a contractor who can actually do the job at a competitive dollar amount to go out to Rupert, right? Like they don't have that pool of ability in companies to give them even a competitive dollar amount. So it's even worse for them because of situations like that. So yeah, this is the effect, and it's even worse than that. But
okay, if I may ask a question, so if this doesn't, it doesn't appear that this bill, what is it, 1140? 1140 doesn't appear to benefit. Like I wouldn't look at 1140 and say like, aha, this benefits me. Or would the people sponsoring this say, no, Matt, this does benefit you, because what we're worried about is that we will have taxing districts and cities that engage in social engineering, and instead of improving city streets, they're improving bike lanes and trying to get people to engage in bimodal transportation. That's how it's benefiting you, because we collectively as a state think bicycle lanes or bimodal lanes are negatively impact your city.
And tell me how widening lanes isn't social engineering. How is, right? Like how, if we build wide, fast roads that get ourselves from A to B in the same amount of time as it would have took otherwise, how are we not engineering our own lives to be completely dependent on vehicles, on sprawling out? Because that's what ultimately happens. The more that we do that, the fact is all around this country, the farther we go. And that's social engineering. It's a reason why the walking rates for kids are at an all-time low, because schools and neighborhoods are farther apart, right? We have other social considerations that we're thinking about, but that social engineering piece is absolutely in play when it comes to how we treat our transportation network. Same thing on the land use side. Go through a drive-through. Is that not social engineering, right? We can't even get out of our car to go get a 500 calories coffee, right? And all of those things that add up. So to fill a sidewalk gap, which is what we're talking about in this instance with this bill, I don't see it as social engineering at all. For me, hell, man, it's freedom. I want the freedom to choose how I move. That doesn't mean I can't drive. That doesn't mean I always will walk. Of course not, right? I've got cars. I drive all the time. But if I don't have the complete infrastructure to even make that choice for myself, what do I have? I have something that's antithetical to what I think is a pretty strong cultural value in the state of Idaho. Further, this bill takes away local authority completely and totally. Why in the world would a group of people in the legislature take away an action for St. Anthony, Idaho, saying, hey, we got 20 feet of sidewalk here we need to fill? Oh, no, you can't do that. And last part of this bill, it's even better. The last paragraph of the bill, if you do decide to do this, you're subject to 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine if you do take action that would be, in their mind, contrary to what the intent of the bill is.
Wow, man, jail time.
Yeah, you're going to
clink. You have like
what are you
a county. Yeah. You're like, dude, I filled the gap in the sidewalk.
Yeah. I wanted kids to walk to school. My bad.
Okay, but let's back up, because what is driving this then? Is it the anxiety? Because I know, look, my former state that shall not be named is definitely one that did things that I did not agree with. I mean, obviously I moved, right? Mm-hmm. And is the anxiety that we will start doing things like eliminating whole, transportation routes in favor of, bicycles or things like that? Because I see what you're saying with which is, hey, look, if you're improving roads or making roads easier for cars, you're socially engineering more people to be in cars. Now, that may be true, but that's not the only thing you're doing, because cars have a pragmatic nature here, especially when it's like winter. Like, I live 25
100%.
minutes away from the nearest Costco, right? Like, I'm not riding a bike, right? So would I like that 25 minutes to be 20? Yeah, I'd like to increase or decrease the amount of time it takes for me to make that trip.
Yeah.
And if it went from 25 to 30 because they added a bike lane somewhere, I'd be mad. I'd be like, come on. Like, I'm driving to get the chicken, right? The rotisserie chicken in the back of the store that everybody knows you want. That's an anxiety that's like, I could see people being upset about that. Is that ultimately like where people are going? They're asking the legislature to take action to protect them from this?
Yeah. So there's a group of people whose motivation in this instance was to craft this bill to essentially put in virtually all dollars towards widening projects, congestion relief, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So that's their motivation. To your point, understood. I'm not a believer. I've not seen, I can safely say, I think I've seen more transportation network in this state than anybody has because of the nature of my work. No one's doing the kind of things that you would see in other major
like
metropolitan,
the West Coast states. Yeah.
Especially blue cities. Let's just call it for what it is.
Sure.
I've never seen a bike lane, for example, come at the cost in the state of Idaho of a travel lane, except for very rare instances. But in those rare instances, one that comes to mind is Mountain Home. They had a 3-lane, one-directional highway, state highway. That road is built for like 25 to 30,000 vehicles a day. The whole city of Mountain Home doesn't even come close to that. This corridor was getting fewer than, I think it was like 4 or 5. So they had a 20,000 square foot home and only needed 1,000 feet, to borrow an analogy.
Why did, if I may ask, just, and I don't mean to interrupt, why were they anticipating that being a main artery for some kind of recreation or travel that they just missed the mark?
We overbuilt the heck out of a lot of urban arterial highways in this state over the years. Twin Falls, downtown, 3 lanes, couplet going opposite direction, right? Again, built for 25,000 cars. They get maybe 4,000 or 5,000. The city of Twin Falls is dying to have those addressed. Still function perfectly fine, because they have people who live there who are trying to cross the street to get into their new and really exciting, re-renovated, if you will, downtown, but they keep having people get hit because they have truckers coming through going 40, 45 miles an hour when it's a 30 mile an hour zone, because the wider we make it, the more inducing of speed we have, by the way.
Oh, so, interesting. So people just naturally go faster 100%. Regardless of speed limit if they have a wider berth.
100%.
Oh.
So here's the deal with transportation, and this is why it's a sticky issue. Transportation often is opposite. The results are often opposite of what you think they're going to be, primarily because it's not a linear relationship. It's not take this can, throw it in said trash can, and there's the result.
Sure.
You have individual folks who have individual brains who act individually when you make an action. And so you think that you have it all figured out and predicted, but the truth of the matter is we often miss that mark. So as an example, widening projects are completely elusive. If widening solved all your problems, Los Angeles would never have traffic. They've spent nearly $1 trillion on widening projects constantly, and they still are. You see in the news all the time, still yet another one. And their congestion is worse today than it was, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Why? Because people, they adjust. They change their travel behaviors. They say, oh man, there's no traffic over there. I was leaving at 6 a.m. Man, I can leave at 7 now. Oh, we just induced traffic, right? I was taking the bus, or I was working from home. Now I can drive, and almost to a T. Anytime you add capacity, it's just a matter of time before that capacity is taken back up and we're right back to where we started from. So that's why it's elusive.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
If I'm taking a bus somewhere and then you guys increase capacity, or the city increases capacity on a roadway, I'm like, oh, dude, no more bus for this cowboy. Like, I'm jumping in my car. even though there's more traffic, I'm still living a more preferred life, which is if I preferred the bus, I would stay on the bus. But in its current iteration, without increased capacity, I prefer car, but I can't engage in that transportation.
Yeah.
So what I do then is I wait till there's capacity, and then I'm like, I get to do the thing I would have wanted to do anyway, which is drive in this car. So even though we have traffic, we have more people being served by that area because we increase capacity, and I'm living a better option for me.
And so that argument ends up, you look like Atlanta, where you just keep going out and out and out. And that's conversations that we're having here. So when you have that.
You mean Georgia, the Atlanta, Georgia?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In other words, we just keep going out farther and farther away, and we end up sprawling out. And now we get into maintenance costs. The maintenance cost to maintain that facility that we widened for the sake of convenience, it continues to go up, 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 up. And it's more now than it ever has been. Maintenance is something no one ever wants to talk about. Nothing sexy about maintenance, potholes, right? However, the problem is we don't have the money to maintain what we have. ACHD, oddly enough, is the best agency in the state of Idaho at maintaining their roads. Not even close. But if you go outside of this valley, every city in it has a standard that's much lower. We don't even have the money to maintain it, but yet we keep adding and adding and adding because of this issue, this congestion relief desire that is just, we're just chasing our tail. And what's worse is we're adding to our coffers that we don't have. So there's a lot of different reasons. You mentioned transit though. Transit is another paradigm that's incredibly tough to deal with because what you would be is a choice rider. You're not dependent. As a choice rider, your standards for riding a bus are very different.
Oh, you're saying public transit?
Yes.
I was like, we're talking, this whole conversation's about transit. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Keep
so
going.
In the world of transit, my point is like, if I'm dependent on it, this is what I have to do. I have to go to the stop whenever it comes in. But if I'm a choice rider, for example, I
have the option to drive or I want to take the bus.
And if it's not at your doorstep, close proximity anyway, and the bus being there every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, all those things add up and they can't possibly serve that.
Sure.
And so there's a whole other paradigm with transit. But this is what I'm getting at when it comes to transportation is every time we think there's a yin that's actually a yang, it ends up performing very differently because of our psychology and individual actors who comprise traffic, quote unquote. We all make these decisions that end up just not playing out. That's why downtown Boise, I'll give you another example. We have a 5-lane couplet, front and Myrtle. If you go back to the 1980 traffic forecasts for what those roads were going to look like, the forecasts went out, and typically they go out 20 years. Computer model says, you should expect this, right?
Is Front Myrtle where it goes onto the freeway and there's one lane that goes right? I know the exact, and that's 5 lanes across.
5 lanes each.
Got it. I know. I got it.
Highly unusual.
Yeah.
Right. Highly unusual. Only thing close to it in this state is, so.
I always take the right lane and go up a block and then make a right and hit front.
You mean you taking independent action that isn't predictable? Is that what you just said?
Well, I always get nervous because if you bet wrong and Shindon's a parking lot, it's over. Right. And sometimes I ditch both State and Shindon and I go up and over the hills. It's like
you're adjusting your route. That is precisely right because you just illustrated the point. Because when you change that road, people then change their route again. And so the model projections from 1980 went out to, I think it was the year either 2000 or 2010, whatever it was. And they were suggesting, even by that point, we're going to have 55,000 vehicles a day on these corridors. It's 2025. You know what they are? They're still under 40. So we forecasted this much, much, much bigger number than is even close to really what we are. Is it busy at times? Of course it is.
Sure.
But we get into that world of forecasting and stuff. It's voodoo science, man. You can absolutely just obliterate these traffic forecast models because they're trying to predict behavior for drivers who aren't even born yet.
Right.
They don't even account for the at-home purchases that Amazon and UPS are. None of the models even show what that is, yet they're still part of the system. A little secret that people don't know, the number of household trips, vehicle trips, has almost always for the last bunch of years been on average of 10. That means 5 leave, 5 come back, right? Sure. They're not that anymore. They're now down to about 7. We ain't even talking about that. You know why it's 7? Because what I just said, part of it is we're having things delivered and we're just not going out as much. We're not as social because we're glued to our damn phone, right? Or we're not going to the movies. We're watching it at home.
Yeah, or we just don't want to go out for what. Like, it's not even that we're glued to our phones. Like, I have one of my sons is way into fish tanks. He loves Petco. Like, he's dying to go to Petco. And mind you, like, I understand, because when I was, oh dude, I love fish tank. When I was in college, I had an 80-gallon saltwater tank in my room, because this guy on my rowing team, he was dating this girl, Erin, and Erin's dad had a fish store. She was great. She did it for him, not me. And he was Australian. Anyway, the point is that Erin's dad had like 20 fish tanks in his backyard because he had this fish store that went out of business. Yeah. So I got this 80-gallon tank for free. I was like, hell yeah. And then I had to make the filter myself because I couldn't afford a saltwater fish tank filter.
Oh, right.
But then I would hang out. I would go to the fish store, and dude, they had what are those shrimp that not peacock shrimp? They're
tiger shrimp.
They had all of them, right? They were wild, right? And so I appreciate where my son's coming from with like, can we go to Petco and like check out the fish and stuff? Yeah. But like I have to force myself to go because I know I can get the Prime tap water, conditioner off Amazon, probably Prime now. Prime Prime in 4 hours, right? Like it'll be half an hour after I get home, we'll have the Prime conditioner. And the problem with that, obviously, is that it's like, all right, you're not supporting local, even though Petco is, but then I was like, okay, we should go to Zamzo's. Like, we should go to Zamzo's. They have fish there. They're awesome fish. I'm sure they have conditioner. But again, it's like, oh, I don't want to get in the car. 100%. And it's like, I mean, ACHD's tearing up downtown Eagle anyway. I don't want to drive through that. Right. And then it drives me, obviously, to the online purchases. So like, there's just, man, it's so hard. It's so hard to rouse the sentiment to go out into the world. Like, can't we just stay here forever?
And now we're dealing with the manifestation of that, which is we have these 500,000 square foot distribution centers. And I can tell you for sure, we have a couple of them here in the Valley, and that's only going to become more. And I can tell you with certainty, having done a lot of work, especially in California, holy moly, those distribution centers are everywhere. In certain places, they are everywhere. And the folks that live in those places, they are fed up because all of the truck traffic that they see. But the reality is, to your point, this is the culture that we have become. I mean, I'm a person who wants to shop as local as anybody, right? I'll tell you a quick story. I'm an odd size, waist-wise, 32, 34 length.
Dude, you and I are almost identical. Right. Look at you.
I can't find pants.
Yeah.
I'm a weirdo when it comes to my shape, right? And so I went out towards the mall. Went out to some of the department stores. And I'm dying going through literally hundreds of pairs of pants to try to find anything. I don't even care about the style at this point. I just need the size, right? I finally found, like 2 or 3 in 3 different stores in probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of going through all these things.
And you had to park.
Oh my God.
You're listening to Mariah Carey Christmas music.
Right. Everything horrible. And I got to the checkout and it was a whole other experience that I'll share with you or not share with you. But the gist of it was I'm just going, man,
what's it
I get
for?
it. I completely understand.
What's it for?
Online, you know, and it's frustrating as an urbanist because I'm all about local. I love local businesses. I love local residents or, like restaurants and things.
I was like, I don't love all local. Some people here are jerks.
Right. Some of them for sure.
Love local residents.
Clearly trying to do the things that they're doing. But in some instances, in certain realms, it's just, man,
bro,
it's hard.
I got to tell you this. It broke my heart yesterday. I'm hanging out with my wife yesterday.
Yeah.
I've done so many episodes over the last 90 days. 80 days, it's something like I've done 160 episodes plus, and it's all by myself. So like all the editing, all the production, grinding, right? And God bless, I've loved every second. I'm not complaining. But yesterday, I'm like, all right, I'm going to produce and send out episodes, content, but I'm taking the day off. Like, we're going to hang out. So we go and get a coffee because a friend of mine from Eagle Chamber, Brandy, she's the executive director. We did an episode. She brought me this coffee. And I was like, oh, dude, this coffee is great. She's like, I know it's from such and such place. I'm not naming place for a very specific reason. But the point is, I take the wife. I'm like, hey, let's go get this coffee. And it's like kind of this bougie latte thing with vanilla. I was like, this is the best treat. Like, it was like getting a milkshake, right? We get it. It's $6.50 each.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this is a coffee. This isn't like Dawson Taylor. This is like a coffee this big. And I was like,
100%.
what the hell? $6.50. I'm like, whatever. So all we want to do is drive around, drink coffee, talk trash. So I'm like, hey, let's do this. Let's not go out to lunch. I don't need a full lunch. There's a sandwich place in downtown Eagle. Let's just go get a sandwich. Like, we'll split a sandwich. I don't even need a whole sandwich. She's like, okay, great. We got our like
later.
Dude, it was, I shit you not, it was over $12 for the sandwich. We get, and this is not like a 2-foot long sandwich. We get into the car and I open the bag. The sandwich is this big.
Yeah. And you're a big guy. That's 3 bites. You're done. Right.
I literally looked at it and she was like, you can have it. I'm like, I don't want, like, you have half, but here we had $6.50 for each coffee. So we're in at $13, just coffee. You're not getting a tip. By the way, you charge me $5 for a coffee. They're paying you enough. I'm not tipping you.
Right.
And then you get the $12 plus sandwich plus tax or whatever. You're in at almost $30.
100%.
And it's like, what the hell? And I want to support local.
Yeah.
I want to buy direct from the farmer or something. But dude, I don't have the money for this. Like,
yeah. I just took my family on a little quick vacation over to Bend, and I mean, every meal, $100, 4 of us, boom, $100. I mean, it could be a Danish and basic stuff. And, you know, I get it. Look, they're trying to survive, and then they got to pay rent in certain cities where that's high. And, you know, there's a lot of variables.
Bro, we're living in Idaho, $6.50 for a coffee.
I was in a department store not long ago and killing time, and you probably know the store and know the coffee store inside the store. And I'm like, I just want an Americano. They're, they were doing their thing, and they're like, it was like 12 ounce. To your point, it was like $6. And I'm going, I'm good. You know what? 90% of this is water. I don't need it that bad, right? And so I hear what you're saying.
Can I ask you something, man? Like, what do we do? I had Representative Wendy Horman in here this morning, and she was very proud that the legislature gave back a lot of tax relief and all these things, and she was like, people are hurting. Yeah. And I shared this story too. I'm like, what do we do? Like, how do we get past this? Because to your point, I can't even go out to eat anymore. I'm like furious because I'll go somewhere, and we're not going lavish. We're not going crazy. And it's like I get pho from my favorite pho place. You're in at like $100. And you're like, how? Like, how is this a thing? Yeah. I got Chipotle. Okay. So the in-laws were in town. My in-laws are in town. This was like 2 weeks ago. This is hilarious. They're like, hey, let's get Chipotle. So I'm picking up Chipotle on my way home. It's one of my son's birthdays. He really wants Chipotle. He really loves it. The rice is off the hook. Right. So I'm like, all right. So the wife texts me the orders. And of course, dude, they broke the cardinal rule. They ordered guac on their bowls. You never get guac on your burrito. If somebody's getting you a free burrito, you don't order the $3.50 guac. Yeah. So they get it. So it's like 2 bowls for the in-laws or burritos, whatever it was, and with guac. And then the wife and me. And then for my boys, I literally just get 2 sides of white rice, 2 sides of black beans, and that's in the things. Couple quesadillas. It was over $100.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, 4 adults and 3 children, over $100. What do we do moving forward? Because the cost of everything, specifically food, it seems to me to be so out of control. And I'm not bashing on restaurants. This is cross restaurant, right? I'm not saying like, hey, this one's screwing us and this one isn't. But like, it's so much money. Like, how do we continue existing in this manner?
Yeah. Man, I wish I had
fix
all
this.
those
I want you to fix this.
The cost of living and I guess just bringing it back to a little bit to the conversation that we're having is that, like this bill, I'll bring it full circle.
Full circle.
It essentially relegates you to choosing the most expensive way of getting around. There's estimates out there that can get you all the way down to the per mile cost of driving a vehicle, right? And that it can range. It depends on where you are because of gas prices, oil, on time, et cetera, wages. But it can range anywhere from, believe it or not, about $3, maybe $3.50 up to, I've seen $7 per mile of the cost it is for us. But yet,
what kind of diesel gas consume?
Well,
like, what are you driving over there?
Well, think about your auto insurance. Right, it's been going up. Why? Because we've had some catastrophic storms that taking out a whole all these car lots, or these agencies, insurance having a total amount, and they're just driving up the cost of auto insurance. Well, that has to be accounted for.
$7 a mile. Okay,
look it up.
Hang on. Hang with me. If that were true, Uber would never work.
I think
if it was $7 a mile, no independent contractor could ever turn a profit at $7 a mile.
That's a whole other discussion. And you may be right in the sense of the economics of it, but I'm just telling you what I've read, and those scales can really range on a per mile basis. But point being is that we do it to ourselves, and it drives me crazy. I'll give you an example too. Like, people complain about the cost of gas all the time. I see the same people who bitch about gas sitting in a drive-through. What are you doing there? You're just burning the same gas that you're complaining about, right? You can't park right there. The parking is voluminous. Walk 20 feet to get in the door. When I take my kids,
sleeping baby in the back, bro. Where's your compassion?
Right. Well, I have kids, and my kids hate me because if we ever go somewhere where there's a drive-through, they know what's coming. I'm like, you better get out of the car.
Get out of the car.
And I make a game out of it. I'm like, look, the queue's 10 cars deep. See that red one right there? Watch. We'll go inside, order our thing. Red one's still in the queue, right? Because inside it's ghost. It's just a ghost town. But point being is that sometimes we're self-inflicting these wounds by, in this instance, forcing ourselves to choose the most expensive way of getting around, and now you're seeing vehicle costs, what that's going to look like in the very near future, right? Another cost that's up. And so you put all that together, your 2 feet, it's free. But I'm not even being given the option. And in a small town, where in a small town, everything's proximate enough. We use how much time in terms of distance and on your watch are you willing to walk to get to a destination? What do you think?
How much time?
Yeah.
Let's say the average person's 30 seconds.
Well, we're really screwed in that case.
I'm not walking 10 minutes somewhere.
I bet you would. It depends.
If there was a coffee shop, I'd walk.
Yeah.
I'd walk 10 minutes to a coffee shop, no problem.
Good enough. That's good enough. You got a dog?
Yeah.
Okay. How long do you walk with the dog?
Dude, I got this dumbest French, but this is not going to help you because my French bulldog, like, he starts snorting when he just walks to the door. He's like,
right.
Like, I got a golden retriever lab mix though. It's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Okay. That's when you look at national surveys, right? And they ask this question about distance. Man, people throw a distance out there and it has to be less than a mile. You get it. You get it, right? But that is an interesting number. And even a half mile, because it equates to time, and time is our commodity, right? And so when we use time as a measurement and say how much time would you be willing to walk, then it gets into another thing, which is recreation versus utility. People are willing to walk a lot farther distances if it's with their dog or to a park or for whatever casual reason, right? But if it's to go get a gallon of milk, oh hell, it better be on the corner because there's a different expectation.
Right.
But my point in that part of it is most of our Idaho cities are in a shed of distance, meaning they're less than a mile wide. So the whole damn town, at least conceivably, should be walkable as long as we have decent, safe infrastructure to allow that. But I'm telling you, so many of the mayors that I've worked with in small towns are just begging for help to finish their system because here's the other dirty secret. For a long, long time, and you saw this across the country, 50s, 60s, even in the 70s, and even into the 80s, where many cities didn't even require sidewalks as development occurred. Right now, they're picking up the pieces, and they're going, we got to fill those gaps, man, because why? People are walking in the streets, right? Or our kids, our vulnerable ones, our older adults who are susceptible to injury. My grandma died because she fell off a sidewalk that was too narrow. Point blank. She just obliterated her shoulder, went in for surgery, never came out the same way, went even close, 3-4 years later, done, right? The matriarch of my family. Why? Because her neighborhood had a 4-foot sidewalk and she was walking next to my nephew or my cousin rather, and she ended up, essentially tripping and falling. At that age, you're done because the design standards have changed and on and on. But point being, most of the communities in the state should be incredibly walkable and give you the option and not have to spend money doing it. Instead, fire up the car, let it warm up, right? Drive even a mile to whatever it is, it all adds up. And so, especially in rural places where the cost of gas is even more because the delivery costs of the gas from the main centers to them is even more expensive. So help me live a more free, healthy, and cheaper life. Nope, not anymore. Not with this bill.
Well, here's the thing. I hear everything you're saying. And no matter, I understand both sides. It's very hard to persuade me one way or another. One, because I'm an idiot, but two, because it's like, why is the state making this call? Like if the city of Eagle has something that works for the city of Eagle, and if the city of Garden City has something that works for Garden City, and if Boise has something that works for Boise, let all three of these different areas do whatever wants. And the idea it's like, hey, increase walkability. Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Or hey, increase this. Okay, maybe. I have no idea. But what I do know is whoever's living there, they probably know what works best for them. Right? They probably know. Man, I was this last summer. We were going from Redfish to Rigby. My wife had this water polo tournament in Rigby, which was lit. It was in the middle of a lake. They had to swim out there. She's in this like co-ed masters team. They won. It was great. But going from Redfish, where we did our family vacation, to Rigby, we had to like stop at this little town, and it was great. It was the middle of nowhere. It was like just past Arco, and we pull over.
City.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go to INL in May. It's going to be fantastic.
That's probably where you were.
No, it wasn't Arco. It was a bit past there. But the point is, we pull over, get gas, and then we're like, hey, let's make sandwiches for everyone. So pull over off the main drag to a little park area, and we're pop open the back, and we're making sandwiches, passing them up. And I hear some, and I look behind me, and bro, there's this gal who's 80 if she's a day, and she's got this, it's hot, it's summer, right? She's got these shorts on, this tattoo on her calf that's like, it's seen some winters, and she's like, and my mom's like, honey, look, and she's, because she's on an ATV at the stop sign. She's driving down the road on the ATV, and she's like, and she goes off. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. I kid you not. 2.5 minutes later, we're done with the sandwiches. We're closing the back, and I hear again, and I look behind me, and here she comes. But instead of just a gal on the ATV with her tattoo, she's got a 40-pack of Miller Lite at her feet. She was driving
priorities,
the ATV
man. Priorities
to get the beer run at like 1:00 on Thursday, and I was like, God bless it. But my point to you, as it relates to this, is. Yeah, the distance might only be a mile, but this lady ain't carrying a 40-pack of Miller home. So like for her, she's like, I got the 4x4. Right. Like it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's situational. I would completely acknowledge that. And also I think what you mentioned about, having cities have their own perspective. Yeah. Okay. I will give kudos in this instance to Ada County Highway District for the last several years. They've had that exact same philosophy that, hey, man, Boise wants to do something a little bit different. There's not a lot of outward growth in the city of Boise. It's mostly infill at this point, whereas Meridian still has room to grow. CUNA is growing, a lot, Star, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. They have a different philosophy on what they're wanting to be. But even in Meridian, for example, they're putting pathways in left, right, and center along their canals where they can, because they don't have the river, right? But they're still attempting, give me the chance if I still want to walk down to a restaurant, have a meal, and come home, right? And they're even still attempting to try to fabric together a system that allows that type of movement should you want to, and here's the thing I would say, every city I've worked in across this country, every damn one of them has the same 3-word term in all of their plans: quality of life. Oh, we want the highest quality of life. I joke, I've never heard a city say we really strive for a marginal quality of life. Like that's where we're shooting, right? No,
that's where we're best served.
And my point is, if you can't walk from your home to the nearest park or whatever, because you feel so unsafe in doing so, how are we making that? How are we reaching quality of life? Hollister, Idaho. Ever heard of it? Probably heard the name Hollister. Hollister as a city is home to 150 people, south of Twin Falls. There are, 30, 40 rooftops, maybe 50, whatever, and a school, a couple of small businesses. It's on the highway as you take, to get down toward Jackpot. Guess what's banned in Hollister, Idaho?
What?
Walking to school.
Why?
Because there's one major road, this is a town in the middle of nothing. It's
just a freeway.
Right. But because there are no real improvements on it, except for the asphalt and soft shoulders, right? They are so afraid of actually letting their kids walk to and from school because they think that they're going to get hit. They have banned it. The sheriff literally will cite the parents and I guess to an extent the kids, but mostly through their parents, saying, no, you can't do this. It's against the law. This bill prohibits a town like Hollister from even going after a grant to try to actually fill that. So let's the kids, why should they be driving 200 feet to go to walk to school when you and I, more than likely, that's what we did. That's what I did.
Yeah, right.
Not every case. There was times when I had to take the school bus because the distance was prohibitive, right? But in other instances, no, man, I walked, right? And it's there's so many benefits to that. That's a whole other conversation. But point being, here's a Hollister, Troy, Idaho. Troy is up by Moscow. Those kids aren't allowed to ride a bike to school because of the road conditions that are near the school. So instead of fixing the damn road to allow this to happen, a natural thing, a kid riding a bike to school, what? To me, that's robbing them of something that is a rite of passage, right? But we can't even address the issue, especially now with this bill that's basically pending.
Man, you make a compelling case here. Chris, let's do this. We've been at this for like almost 40 minutes. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I want to keep talking traffic. I want to keep talking like I genuinely do, because I'll let me tell you why. This has been a question. Again, I had Rebecca Arnold on, who is running for ACHD against Alexis Pickering, and I didn't get to chat with Alexis, but somebody reached out to me afterwards and they're like, look, you have to understand that we are capable of engineering safer streets. And I, of course, don't know anything about it. And this guy goes in to explain to me, he said, look, you have the setup in downtown Boise right now on State Street. You got 2 lanes in each direction. It's extremely dangerous. And I was like, why? Like, I don't understand. And he explains, look, if you're in the rightmost lane and you're going down State Street doing whatever, and somebody starts crossing the street, you slow down and stop for them. Yeah, sure, no problem. He said, well, the problem is as that person crosses in front of your car, the cars behind you don't see him and they'll go around you maintaining a 25 or 30 mile an hour speed and potentially hit the pedestrian, because the oncoming traffic can see him, but the car going around you doesn't. And people die like this all the time. That struck a chord to me because my mother-in-law saw someone die right in front of her. She was the car that slowed down and somebody swerved around her and struck the pedestrian. And since that got pointed out, and again, I've been coming down to the Capitol every day for the last 3 months, it's horrifying to be on State Street where I'm like, oh my, like my hands are sweating, right? I'm watching pedestrians, and it was like on Friday, there was this guy who was like inching across the street. I was like, oh God, I almost opened my door to like, protect the guy crossing the street. I don't know the answers to engineering, to traffic stuff, but I have started seeing it as it got pointed out to me. And it is becoming it's becoming one of those things where like, oh, this is really important.
Yeah.
I had right before you came in, I had John Oppenheimer from the Idaho Conservation League. He chats about a gajillion things, but one of his children's friends died last year on, crossing a street going to senior orientation for high school. And that's not good. Yeah. Okay. Like, we need to have this conversation. The idea that we shouldn't even talk about engineering roads for pedestrians, the idea that we shouldn't even have a conversation about what cities can and can't do, and the idea that the state can legislate things that are universally good for every single municipality in the state of Idaho with things like traffic design. That to me seems off. And again, I don't know anything about it. And like, I love to hear all sides, but it's like, I don't understand why that works. Yeah. So please come back. Let's keep this conversation going. I really appreciate you. Let's do it again.
Be my pleasure. Happy to talk all about this issue and give hopefully examples throughout this state where I've seen blood on the asphalt the next day from the types of things that you just described, and absolutely believe, yes, we can 100% do things about this. We have to have the will, and we have to be honest about this conversation. If we're not, then we're just going to keep on having it in a way that's not solving the problem. So I'm game for it. Let's do it.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it. We'll do it again.
Sounds good.